So I guess, Nikki, maybe not a lot of people in the Telos community have gotten a chance to get to know you a little bit. I don't know if you could just give us just a little bit of an intro, who you are and kind of like what you're doing at Telos.
Sure. Sure, no, thank you so much, John. So my name is Nicky, as you may all know, and I'm responsible for business development at Telos Foundation. So a little bit about myself and my story within Telos. So I joined Telos in July actually of 2023, and initially was responsible for the growth of DeFi on Telos. It's been quite a challenging and interesting role and quite a fulfilling ride with numerous challenges, I would say. And I mean, life would be boring without them. And since then, I've met like lots of cool and awesome people, like awesome community members, incredible ecosystem participants, and I'm truly actually excited about the potential that Telos is bringing into the layer one landscape. So aim is pretty much of this session is to inform the community, the ecosystem participants, also build trust and strengthens this connection to Telos and inform them basically what's going on within the BD front, because there's a lot going on, but we don't really speak much about it. And moreover, it's like the goal is to bring more transparency and enable new joiners like get to know Telos better and its ecosystem growth and BD activities that are happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's really great. The community gets to know you a little better. I work with you on a more and more regular basis, and so I see, for example, we're talking to lots of DeFi projects, and you help sort of give them a lot of information about what's going on. And I guess at the same time, you really are getting lots of feedback from our DeFi partners in particular. And maybe that's some of the stuff we can talk about today because um, since I've joined Telos, I've been doing a pretty extensive deep dive. Uh, I've been talking to lots of people throughout the organization. And on the one hand, of course, there's a lot of great things that we're excited about. We're positive, uh, there are positive developments for our ecosystem. But on the other hand, and maybe this is one of the things that we can start doing on a more regular basis is as an organization, we can talk about some of the challenges we're facing and the steps, that we're taking as a result. So I guess, from my standpoint, um, I would just start kind of first of all, if you can just in your own words talk about your experiences at Telos and how you sort of see our business development pipeline, some of the things we've been working on, and especially some of the kind of milestones we're looking to achieve, or some of the milestones we may have achieved, especially in the more recent, let's say in the last 6 months or so.
Sure. So I can actually provide an overview of my experience in the last 6 months and what we have currently achieved to this date. So past 6 months, I could have said it have been quite tumultuous. Yet at the same time, we've managed to have actually a lot of successful moments as well. So I'm sure that our community and ecosystem they remember the multi-chain event and the impact of it on overall community and ecosystem. I would say. We've been heavily impacted by it, I'm not going to lie. And despite that, the team kept on working actually day and night to ensure that there is a proper solution and to rectify the problem and to bring a solution that could be actually reliable and acceptable for the community. In the background, though, like while we were doing that as well, we kept on. Onboarding new DeFi protocols like dApps and also adding infrastructural elements as well in order to ensure that this sort of situation wouldn't happen on the other end. So in no time, like back then, I remember we managed to onboard around 20 dApps, and we're waiting actually for the bridge to go live in order for those dApps to launch. So and essentially we launched layer zero, if I'm not mistaken. On 25th of October, which led to the launch of several other ecosystem dApps, such as, for example, Swapsicle, which introduced actually concentrated liquidity, relying on algebra integral. Then we had a Symmetric coming along, OpenOcean, Velocore, Erland, and some more, right? And essentially, since then, we've been quite heavily trying to build a DeFi ecosystem and bring more and more novel, let's say, dApps and interesting use cases into the ecosystem. And our main focus, actually, when it comes to the DeFi, not like also like now we started also looking in detail at gaming as well. But like when it comes to DeFi, first thing that I would like to mention is the composability, right? Because in the end of the day, composability enables developers to build like upon existing protocols and create like new financial products and services without like the need to start from scratch. And they this like composability also enables like provides the possibility to layer applications on top of each other and foster kind of like an environment of innovation and experimentation, let's put it this way. And also like what is really important like is to ensure interoperability when it comes to DeFi, like basically enabling the DeFi projects to work smoothly together. And also like when different protocols they interoperate, composability actually lowers the barriers to entry like for both users and developers. And yeah, so like, and we have seen lots of interesting use cases coming into our ecosystem, not just like in like let's say in vanilla DeFi side like dexes or lending and borrowings, but for example we have also onboarded a couple of protocols which are in the real world asset space. For example, Kuma by Mimo protocol. Then we have recently actually agreed with T protocol, and we keep on actually we try to keep our eye on this like innovative solutions. And on the gaming side, we've been making strides as well thanks to our awesome team that we have in place led by Justin Edwards. Then we have there Luigi and TBG. They've been like doing a lot of tons of work behind the scenes as well. So for example, recently we actually announced partnership with Serial on the gaming side. Like Serial is essentially tooling, Web3 gaming tooling, and what they enable is like minting game assets as NFTs. The builders they can build their own games, game asset stores. They can use popular game engines and many more stuff. And essentially, this partnership has been instrumental because through them we've been onboarding quite a lot of its leads on that front as well. Like they've been closely collaborating with us and sending lots of like interesting projects our way. Like I would say around at least 5 per week. So we're gonna start doing announcements there as well. So please stay tuned. And of course, like this like all these things like all these activities they don't come without challenges, as you may know, as you have mentioned. We are facing challenges still on the infrastructural side. I mean, I can go much deeper into it later, but we in the background we're actually working to address them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that's a very good point. I guess, like, thinking about it strategically, maybe the first kind of point I'd like you to sort of touch upon is, and I talked to Justin about this actually recently, and you sort of see other big networks, big chains, and they have all the big apps. Of course, I remember before when I was with Polygon and we got Aave to come on board, it was a big deal. Um, and so I guess there's a couple different ways to think about it. And one is, do you focus on trying to recruit the big blue chip, super well known, applications, which is an interesting strategy and for sure has its merits. Or and I think Justin talked about this quite elegantly, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. But just imagining Telos as a place where all of the new innovative dApps and projects, maybe that haven't reached very big critical mass yet, and so Telos becomes if for the Americans out there, it's kind of like the minor leagues before you find that gem pitcher and he goes to the major leagues. In a sense, it becomes the network where users can find all of these exciting, up and coming, cutting edge, young projects. And so I'm just wondering, how do you view the two approaches? This kind of like looking for the blue chip, mature dApps versus the young, cutting edge stuff, and what are your thoughts about how Telos should approach that strategically from a business development standpoint?
Sure. So generally speaking, right, if you look like let's say at other chains or at the scalability solutions, like for example Polygon, what you can see is that like when Polygon started, they didn't start immediately with blue chip solutions, even though they had a competitive advantage because they were the, let's say, the kind of the first working scalability solution in the market, right? So when they started, they had their quick swaps and other forks of like very I would say popular protocols out there, and essentially they were leveraging those like teams, they were supporting those teams in order to ensure that they grow their TVL grows, right, and the activity grows on their chain. So like Aves, Uniswaps, and whatever, like when we're talking about blue chips, they came later to Polygon, I would say. And essentially like I would say we're kind of taking the same approach here. And if we, for example, look at Mantle as well, right, which is an optimistic rollup, they're also kind of following, I would say, the same sort of playbook as Polygon. Like they're starting, like this start was quite interesting. Dapps, smaller dapps in their ecosystem, they start to onboard them, provide them with support, ecosystem support, grants, incentives, and other type of support in order to enable them within their ecosystem. And slowly but surely, they started to actually attract names as well. So generally speaking, I do believe that these two approaches are to some extent they're complementary, but they're also different, right? So in my view, you can't just like as a chain start onboarding the blue chip straight away, because first of all, you need to be infrastructurally ready for that. So we can of course go and like, for example, post a proposal or a temp check on Aave governance forum and be like, okay, hey, look at us guys, we would like Aave to deploy on Telos EVM, for example. But the thing is that like what will happen, we have to be also, I would say, infrastructurally mature for that to happen, actually, for us to succeed in that journey. So for example, we need to ensure that we have for example, proper notices service providers, when it comes to the RPC, public endpoints and providers. We have proper Oracle infrastructure in place, data indexing solutions, for example, explorers, certain multi-sig infra, right, simulation infra such as Tenderly. Then we have to check like the bridging landscape, for example. When it comes to Uniswap, they're quite actually, let's say, selective there because, for example, they would like to work with the likes of Wormhole. And yeah, we have to also ensure that, for example, maybe we have additional providers when it comes to DeFi, such as like liquid staking providers, which enable the possibility to access the liquidity without the need to unstake tokens and so on, right? So we need to ensure that those are in place in order for us to be successful when we do such a proposal. And of course, right, like it doesn't mean that, for example, when it comes to the blue chips, like when they come into your ecosystem, they'll bring you tons of TVL or users. Normally that's rarely the case. If we look at most of the blue chips, they're actually TVL and user activity is still centered around Ethereum. So like the other chains like they are not the like ones leading on those blue chip dApps. And I mean, though, from the marketing perspective, of course, it's great because it's basically, I would say, kind of a stamp of approval, right? So if you manage to actually do that, it means that you have a lot of things together and you are quite a mature chain and you're playing on the same like playing field when it comes to actually like different other chains. So you're quite competitive. So that's pretty much the added value, though I do see that when it comes to us as Telos, we are more focused on onboarding, like I would say, competitive, smaller protocols that, for example, they are not deployed on many chains. We usually look at the protocols that are deployed maximum on 2-3 chains. So they have a very strong focus on our community. That's very important for us. And they work like with our community closely. So that's what we're focused on, and we're focused on like onboarding like innovative solutions as well. So, and as soon as we see this sort of opportunity, we do approach the team and speak to them directly. And like going forward so far, that's how we envision it happening, like till we do make it fully composable and resolve the issues on the infrastructural side, those challenges, let's put it this way. And after that, we can start actually approaching, of course, the blue chips as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of an important talking point with our community is to try to understand. Of course, everyone gets very excited when they see a big name, but joining the network. But at the same time, it really depends on what is the strategic value of that. To your point, that can be a stamp of approval, so to speak. It can speak to the state of readiness of your infrastructure, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's sort of like some magic silver bullet that suddenly, And in fact, I remember the early Ethereum days. I mean, it's like everything was before Uniswap became this big thing. It was just a talk at a conference that turned into a project that turned into, and even before Uniswap, things like Ether Delta came along. Um, there was lots of iterations before you got to that point, which I think it's important to kind of like frame that, wherein if we allow the innovation to start, to begin its journey on Telos, then we can kind of grow with those projects over time. But it does bring us, I guess, to the next really important issue, which is just thinking about some of the feedback that we get, for example, from dev teams. When a new project is looking to deploy, they are looking for the least amount of overhead. Okay, everybody is resource constrained, and so there's lots of technical teams that maybe what they want is to come to a network, have very good documentation, good infrastructure, a minimal or non-existent amount of nuisance issues like RPC endpoint, troubles, and so that they can deploy very quickly and not have a tremendous amount of overhead, particularly developer resources dedicated to deployment. So, maybe you could talk about how important that is, and also delve into. I think I would say, to be fair, on the Telos side, um, there can at times be developer overhead for our partners, which we're working very hard to reduce. Likewise, there have been RPC issues. Maybe you can talk a little about, again, the importance of low overhead for deployment for our partners, and in particular some of the challenges we faced, and then maybe touch a bit about some of the things we're doing to address that.
Sure, sure, sure. I mean, like when it comes to developer overhead, right? We're getting like we understand that there are certain challenges there, and we're actually trying to resolve that to start with. So I would like to emphasize that as well. It's not like nothing is happening behind the scenes. We are like taking all the necessary measures in order to ensure that developers have like little amount of friction as possible, right? As little amount of friction as possible. So that's very important for us. So when it comes generally speaking to developer overhead, I see it this way, right? So there is basically on like support on the tooling side, like your docs, your infra and whatever, right? And then there's also support on the wider ecosystem side, let's put it this way. So when it comes, of course, on the docs, like for example, like this is like first key element that you should have in place, and I think like we've done a great job there, like because like I haven't actually heard or seen a lot of developers asking the questions that they can't themselves locate in our docs. So that's pretty cool, and I'm really happy like with the quality of it, and I think our team has done a tremendous job there. And then of course when it comes to infra, like for example, right, we're still, for example, facing issues with the stability of our RPC endpoints. Then, of course, for example, like the other thing that a lot of the times that dApps ask us is about the data indexing solutions, especially when it comes to the graph, right? For example, it's important for the solutions like the graph or Dune to operate on network, like to kind of avoid bringing that data or building that data pipeline from scratch. And we have actually resolved it to a certain extent, right? We start to work with Covalent, for example. Then we have also onboarded Gold Sky. And also the other thing that the developers look at, for example, your Oracle infrastructure. We are working, for example, with Dia, with Ordia, with Redstone, with for example, supra oracles. If I, yeah, that's the correct one, exactly, supra oracles. But of course, like developers also would like to have some options such as Chainlink or Pit network. Like Chainlink is a little bit hard to get. Like I'm not gonna be sugarcoating that, because they do have their internal process, and essentially they're very slow to integrate or new networks. But essentially, Pith network, for example, would be the next good one, because a lot of developers and builders are asking about it. And of course, one of the most, I think, critical elements is also like a good quality explorer, right? Which is very important for verifiable smart contracts, code visualization. And also it serves for you as a basic data analysis tool. And there are like a bunch of other providers as well. You have, for example, Avascan, Etherscan, then you have Block Scout. So all of these sort of like partners we need to work much closer with. And of course, like the other part is the simulation infra, which can come a little bit later, or when, for example, you execute test transactions on forked production networks, and you can actually prototype, yeah, like new developments. The examples for those would be like Tenderly. They're the like most supported, and I would say the most known tool within the space, generally speaking. I mean, on the bridges side, we have addressed like lots of these issues when it comes to enabling like proper bridging solution on the network. Like, for example, we're working with layer 0, but we are also like thinking constantly on the to expand on that front as well, because we do believe that it's really important to have like several providers. Essentially, like after what we've experienced with multi-chain, we don't want the same sort of experience to repeat. And of course, like would be cool for us to introduce, let's say, bug bounty programs with such providers such as Immunify. So those programs would actually provide proper procedures to prevent and to react to security incidents, like which is actually fundamental for any platform or any dApp. So this is like one part, I would say. Those are the infrastructural real elements. And I've seen like basically, of course, dApps or developers that come into the ecosystem, into our ecosystem, they do raise those points. But also when it like we have to also think of the ecosystem support part, right? So when it comes to the ecosystem support part, I think like our like team is doing really great there, and I think we should keep the spirit up, because we're really working closely with the ecosystem dApps, right? Like whatever happens, we do answer all their questions. We ensure that they're properly onboarded. I mean, to the best like we can do, and then we ensure that they get all the support that they need, rather whether it's technical, whether it's marketing or anything else, right? So for example, if they tell us, okay, could you please advise us a smart contract auditor, we do provide them with the list of smart contract auditors that they can work with. So we really try to go beyond actually here, in order to ensure that they feel comfortable, they get to know our community, and they get to know other ecosystem participants. And also what we try to ensure without our ecosystem is that all the dApps, they collaborate with each other, which is highly important for us, so that maybe like they can build something together, or like they could start together the ecosystem flywheel. So the close collaboration between different dApps is highly essential for us as well. So that's what I could say about it. But like, of course, we do have our challenges that we still need to fix. But I think like we're on the right track. This is where I would like to inform the community and the ecosystem that they shouldn't be worried. We understand these points. We're taking them seriously, and we're working towards resolving them.
Yeah, yeah. I think so. You know, further to that point, it's sort of like, and maybe this can segue into kind of the next question here, but just thinking about resource constraints and allocating accordingly, depending on priorities and needs, and finding the right balance. Like in my opinion, I think now that I've settled into Telos and had some time to evaluate, I feel like perhaps a little bit of a misallocation of resources in the past insofar as putting resources towards maybe a wallet or a block explorer, as opposed to some of the other infrastructure components, particularly resolving RPC issues, is the kind of example of maybe resource allocation, hierarchy that we need to re-examine. Um, in my opinion, I feel like, and I think we both share this view very strongly. Telos should always aspire to remove the overhead and the requirements for developers to deploy on our network, right? Like we aim to always make it easier for devs, and that's sort of like a relentless pursuit. Therefore, the way, in my opinion, to think about it is we should prioritize all the things that make it easier for devs first, um, and then sort of if that's our first principle, that's kind of our first principle approach. Then everything else can kind of like sequentially follow. That's sort of one point, and then another point, I guess, just from a resource, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and then also just from a resource allocation standpoint. I mean, obviously, I've come in and we're expanding resource allocation right now, particularly for a lot of this infrastructure stuff. Just trying to get your opinion on how you imagine a more efficient allocation of resources. Your wish list going forward as far as what we need to be working on. Let's say now, maybe in the next couple months, and then maybe over the rest of the year. It'd be great to hear your thoughts on those 2 points.
Sure, absolutely. Like when it comes to the resource allocation, I think like internally we are a very lean team, and we're doing quite a lot. So, and I think we have like an amazing talent in place, and we're leveraging it at the right places. So that's really cool to see. And the other thing that I would like to mention when it comes to um, like the missing elements and who should do what, right? Like, so generally speaking, I'm not a very big proponent of building things in house, because I do believe that, because first of all, you're competing against the teams that already have a ready to go solution, and it's basically they focus on that, it's their day-to-day job, it's their bread and butter, and it's much cheaper actually to go, I believe, and work with an existing solution rather than to try to build it yourself, at least in the beginning, right? In the future, of course, if you are large enough, if you have lots of resources, as you mentioned, like people, and if you have like good enough of funding, you can explore the ways of like building your things like bridges or whatever, even though I still wouldn't venture in on that front. But like essentially, I do believe that you should go and work with the existing solutions, like with the like existing quality solutions, let's put it this way. So when it comes to the wish list, right, like I think also I mentioned some of it already before, but for example, I do believe that the priority one for us to resolve are the RPC public endpoints and providers, because like basic and reliable, I would say, public RPC infrastructure is a must. It's a must for us, for all the builders in the ecosystem, or for actual developers that are exploring or entertaining the idea to deploy on Telos. And why is it important? Because it's simple. It provides a way to connect to the network, both for data reading and transaction submission, right? So, and there are a bunch of, for example, notice the service providers that ensure reliability, performance, uptime, load balancing. They provide like easy to integrate APIs and so on. So, for example, like some of these noteworthy names are ChainStack, Pocket Network, Alchemy, QuickNote, Anchor, Infura, and like these are the ones that we should, like, I would say, focus on onboarding and working closely together with. Like they will enable builders, developers to easily deploy on Telos EVM on our chain. And then the other thing that I would suggest actually focusing on, like in terms of the next priorities are explorers, like to get something like, for example, Block Scout, or like entertain the idea of getting another good name that's out there, or good builders that could actually build a very comprehensive tool for data analysis, for reading and writing interface for smart contracts and so on, like where we could actually move more towards the industry standard, I would say. And then of course, this like the third most important priority, I would say, being whether it's an Oracle infrastructure or data indexing solutions, but like I would put them together, right? So this is like, these are like, I think these are the most important ones, and I think we should address them, like in my view, if I were to choose, like at least in the next 3 to 4 months, the faster the better, but of course, like the if we address it in that time frame, that would be cool. And also, right, when it comes to the infra on the DeFi side, like if let's just not look at the infra as for all, but also let's look at a specific infra. I'm a big fan of actually having a proper liquid staking solution provider, and I do believe that it's something that's needed because it can create a positive feedback loop, like when it comes to the ecosystem flywheel, right? So it catalyzes, let's say, a series of interconnected benefits and incentives that actually can reinforce and accelerate the growth and utility of the ecosystem. So users, for example, can stake their and tokens, then they can participate, like their funds are not locked, they can actually go and participate and use different DeFi like protocols was using these derivative tokens received through liquid staking. And for example, they can engage in activities such as lending, borrowing, yield farming, and also like you can create actual new financial products and services around it. So the availability of staking derivatives opens kind of a door for new financial products, and such as staking derivatives as collateral for loans, for example, or inclusion in liquidity pools for additional yield generation. And then you can have, for example, reinvestment and compounding returns, increase liquidity in the ecosystem as part of it. And you can attract more users and more capital, right? When the people see that there's lots of going on, or like there's lots of liquidity within a specific ecosystem, they get attracted by it. So those are, I would say, very important infrastructural elements that we need to resolve, and we're looking into it. And I'm really like actually bullish that we're gonna resolve it quite soon. I mean, despite the fact that we do have these shortcomings, I would still say like Telos is still like from its performance, from its history, right? It's like number one out there when it comes to the competitors. We never had a downtime. We are in production when it comes, we're processing more than 15,000 TPS. When it comes to our also architecture, right, we don't have like we're architects in a way to not have a mempool, so transactions are processed in first in and first out basis. So without the possibility, like this doesn't enable the possibility for MEV attacks. So as a matter of fact, I do believe that we're greatly positioned in this I would say space. We just have to ensure that we resolve certain infrastructural issues.
I would say, just again going back to the early Ethereum days, you mentioned essentially, and the Ethereum Foundation did attempt to build many things themselves in the beginning, certainly to start the network. My buddy Fabian Vogelsteller, a lot of you know him as the Luxo CEO now. He built the Mist wallet, and you know there was attempts by the foundation to build Ethereum infrastructure, but it became very clear that actually the role of the foundation primarily would be to help stimulate the development by others, of ecosystem components. To a large extent, that's basically what Ethereum, or rather, what Consensus did for Ethereum in the first few years, and other groups as well. And so, I totally agree from a strategic standpoint. Um, the role of the Telos Foundation primarily should be to help stimulate the development of the Telos ecosystem. Um, we can be responsible stewards, strategically think about what our ecosystem needs, work to form the right partnerships, in some cases, develop things ourselves, and ultimately, again, with this relentless focus on providing the best possible developer experience, I think strategically that's an important first principles approach for us, and something that you and I have been talking about quite a bit lately internally, and others as well. And so, really making that point to the community, I think, is really important. And then I guess that would kind of segue to just sort of my last question for today, which is just thinking about various programs, Telos Spark, or just um, the current approach that we have towards whether it's grants or other activities, trying to get more and more ecosystem development. Just you know your ideal vision or happy path as far as how the foundation can go ahead and actually execute against this vision of stimulating ecosystem development, potentially through programs like Spark, as an example.
Actually, like what you mentioned previously, I totally agree with that because the role of the foundation is to actually ensure that there is a growth and adoption of the underlying protocol, right? So, and we should be acting like stewards of that. So we should pretty much ensure that the developers are onboarded easily into our ecosystem. They have all their tools that they need to get onboarded. They don't depend on us. Essentially, like we just try as an organization, as Telos Foundation, we should start becoming more and more like actually less and less relevant, let's put it this way, right? So if we're aiming to go towards that decentralization, and we should ensure that like essentially the role of foundation gets to a point that we're not needed anymore, let's put it this way, or like we're a super small team that basically manages certain requests, let's put it this way. And like when it comes to to different programs, like if we look at different foundations or different organizations, they are running as us different programs as well. Like recently, for example, we launched Telos Spark with one of our ecosystem partners, Symmetric. And the idea behind Telos Spark is actually to onboard interesting projects at an early stage. So we're looking at a variety of projects here from various verticals like DeFi, gaming, NFTs, and so on. And the aim is like it's an accelerator program, so the projects should be pretty early stage. They can be also at an idea stage or have like an MVP, which we really like and we would like to pursue working with them. And we have actually received tons of requests there, like more than 50 applications. And currently we are going through the analysis phase where we're checking like which applications will be or which applications will be more suitable for the use cases that we're looking for. And essentially, like our aim is after that to invite them to the first cohort. So that's what we're working for. And we're actually like encouraging all the builders out there, all the developers out there, whether in the community or outside of the Telos community. If you haven't checked it out, please go and look at Telos Spark xyz and please apply, please send us your application. We're really open and keen to receive interesting propositions. So this is one thing. And of course, what else we have is the grant, like any other foundation is the grants program. But I mean, if you look at the history of grants program, they have also evolved, I would say, because if we look at 2021, for example, early 2022, I would say the grant scheme, generally speaking, was kind of a grifter economy. Unfortunately, it turned into it because like people or usually would come and apply for a grant and then like yeah, they would get a grant without any issue straight away, and then like they wouldn't care about actual delivering the product. I mean, so that like, and they would go and do it with tons of other chains. It wasn't like chain specific. I would say like they would go to one chain, then to the next one, and collect grants and essentially deploy just on one chain, and that would be it, right? And But ever since, I believe since that time, lots of grants programs have evolved and they have become more responsible. So nowadays, what basically different foundations or organizations are looking for, like when they provide the grants, they do it on milestone basis, right? So for example, let's say you have to deliver like let's say milestone X to get paid for it, or you have to deploy fully to get paid your grant. So that's the idea. But also, like, just like deployment part doesn't resolve the issue, we have to ensure that like the DApp or whoever, like the project that you're onboarding into your ecosystem, continues to work with your community. Like all different projects, they can come and just simply deploy their DApp and not care about your community, not care about your ecosystem, not answer to your requests and so on. But that's not the aim. The aim is actually you want to work closely with those guys in order to ensure that you can impact their growth and they can impact yours. So it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship, and that's what you want to achieve, and that's what we're trying to achieve through the grants program as well. And how we pay it out, like essentially usually at the end of the deployment, but sometimes of course we do have the arrangement with the projects that we do it on specifically milestone based. But also what we provide apart from that, we do provide from the Telos Foundation side the liquidity injection support, which is really important to ensure that if, for example, we're talking about taxes, when the users come, they don't have like a horrible trading experience with high slippages and so on and so forth. So they can easily go and trade without any issues. And also, like, we do provide incentives as well. And here we're also taking a little bit of a different approach than has been taking in the past, like because we still believe that liquidity incentives, for example, are a pivotal mechanism which when it comes like for attracting users and activity to the platform, because they don't only bootstrap liquidity, but they also serve like to distribute projects tokens like to wider user base, which can potentially enhance decentralization and engagement. So, and when it comes especially to the early days of a project or the early stages of the DeFi project, it's really important for attracting liquidity. Like liquidity is crucial, right? And liquidity mining incentives, they do encourage users to deposit their assets, like providing the necessary capital for trades, loans, and other financial activities. So, and as a matter of fact, we also do that milestone based. So, for example, we do provide certain amount to ensure that there is a certain amount of users going to that platform and trying to let's say farm those rewards. But also what we check is that like we check that like we set them milestones. We'll say like, okay, if you want the next round, you have to, for example, obtain XYZ in TVL on Telos CVM. So let's say 1 million on Telos CVM. Or like, for example, you have to provide us with your user plan. How are you going to grow your user base? Like what kind of marketing activities are you going to take? And here again, we also do provide support to the ecosystem dApps. We do, for example, different quests. We do different campaigns with the ecosystem dApps. And we will be like going forward, we'll be doing them on continuous basis. And when it comes actually general speaking to grants, incentives, and so on, I don't think that there's a player that figure in the space that figured out like how to do it in the right way. I think it's more at all of it is still at the experimentation phase, and we're trying to experiment and see what really works, right? What really provides the value to both ends, where the parties can benefit from it and work together like in this symbiotic relationship. But I would say it's still like, I don't know, probably the industry is still at its early days, and it's really hard to figure out whether it's going to be the right strategy after all. But essentially, our aim is to attract great developers into our ecosystem, is to attract liquidity into our ecosystem, and we are keen to work with like very gifted developers with interesting ideas. So, and we're looking forward to receive more requests on that front. And I mean, like that, I think that's really important for every ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree with that. Okay, cool. Well, I think we should keep doing this. maybe once a week, every couple weeks, and then we can sort of have updates as far as like what went on the past week, and just kind of like keep the community informed, because I think this is really important. It's sort of like, on the one hand, there's lots and lots of stuff out there about Telos that, like, oh, we're so great and it's amazing and blah blah blah. But I think to be much more authentic, we need to actually engage with the community and be like, this is what we're working on. These are some of the challenges we're facing. This is how we're going about it. And I feel like we should keep doing this. So yeah, let's talk again very soon. Maybe next week or the week after even.